How's it going, guys? John here. This is the Basic Expert, and I'm making a video that's kind of been a request, I think, of some people after I shared a video talking about my Game Master's binder, where I keep a lot of my notes that I use for quick reference when running the game. And people seem to like that episode, that they liked that video, and me talking about sort of the prep that I go into and how I try and make it as minimal and easy on myself as I possibly can. And someone had suggested in the comment section that I should do a video talking about my basic fantasy game in particular. I think. I might have made it up. I don't know. I'm making this video anyways, so tough luck. If no one wants to see this, I guess no one's going to watch it. I kind of want to do a deep dive into basic fantasy as well and really talk about it as a game system and why I have chosen it as my game of choice. Before we get too far into the video, I want to point you to some things. First and foremost, I've set up a subscribe star for my channel and for LibreArt. LibreArt is a website where you can download Creative Commons art, art that I made under the Creative Commons, that I put out there under the Creative Commons. It's free to use. You can use it commercially. So if you have a module or a book or something that you're working on, and I understand that hiring an artist is a tough thing in these days, and sometimes you don't want to be stuck using the same public domain art that everyone else in your position is stuck using. And so I've tried to make a website where a lot of my old art, and I'm making some new art for it too, is up there for you to use for free. All you have to do is give me credit for it. So libreart.online. Link is in the video description. I also, the subscribe star for that supports that and this channel, and so make sure you check that out. So supporters on Subscribestar get an adventure a month or some kind of OSR supplement that I work on once a month. You get one of those. So make sure you check that out. I'm trying to make it so that it is beneficial for people to want to come and support me on that part. I don't want to just sit there and panhandle and ask for support for the content I'm doing. There's something in it for you. Hopefully you find value in it. I'm also on Itch. You can find some of my supplements on there as well that I've written, and of course I'm going to plug Cowpunchers. Make sure you check that out. It is a rules-light cowboy western game. Uses D6, success or fail sort of rule system. Very simple to play, use, very deadly too. So make sure you check that out. Anyways, on to the topic of the video. We're talking about Basic Fantasy. Basic Fantasy is a game by Chris Gonnerman, who took the BX rule set and restated them in a lot of ways under the 3.5 edition OGL SRD. And it makes some changes to things that I think make it more appealing to more modern gamers, and it's why there's a lot of things going for this. I think people kind of, they talk about their old school centrals, they talk about Osric, which Osric is another great one I'd love to go over eventually. I'm not running an Osric game, but it's a great game. This isn't as slick as old school centrals. This isn't as, the art isn't as good as old school centrals or other games like that, other OSR games like that. But what this does have going for it is that I got this hardback book for like $15, it was like $12 or $14 or $15. It was very inexpensive for this. And it is, 160 something pages of rules, everything you need to play old school style basic expert edition D&D in this book. And I think that is fantastic for that price. Like, you simply just can't beat it. On top of that, the PDFs are free. So if you're not sure if Basic Fantasy is for you, you can go to the Basic Fantasy website. Link will be in the video description, and you can decide for yourself whether or not you think this game system is the game system for you. Now, what is different about this? I mentioned that there's some things in this that are different from, say, regular basic expert editions of D&D. What is different with this is that it uses ascending AC. I kind of wish it would have used descending AC as well. That's one thing I like in old school essentials or in White Box, which I've reviewed in the past, and I think I want to revisit that game. I feel like my earlier reviews of stuff was just not very good. I'm trying to get better at it. But this Basic Fantasy uses an ascending armor class system with attack bonuses, so there's no THAC0. So that might be a little less scary for a lot of new players if you're trying to get them into your play group to transfer over into it. Thankfully for me, 2 of the 3 players in my campaign for this that I'm currently running, when I got them to switch over, 2 of the 3 come from old school, so they were all about it. One was a 5th edition player, and he's really liking this old school feel and simplicity that comes with it. And so I really like that aspect. And just the fact that everything you need to play is in one book. When everything you need to play is in a single book, I appreciate that greatly. I get the buying multiple book things, and part of that's fun. It looks great on your bookshelf, but as far as a game master trying to reference things, I prefer to have it all in one book, just for easy reference. One thing I forgot to mention, too, with the difference between Basic Fantasy and the of traditional Basic Expert rules is that Basic Fantasy separates race and class. So it uses ascendant AC and separates race from class. So you can be a dwarf or an elf is no longer your class. It's just your race. Same with halfling. So those are the 4 races that are available to player characters at the start. And there are more classes and more supplements on the Basic Fantasy website. The other benefit of Basic Fantasy is that it is supported by a very creative community. There are modules for free on the Basic Fantasy website, or you can get a lot of adventure anthologies and campaigns like Morgan's Fort. You can get those for free on the Basic Fantasy website, or you can get the campaign books and adventure books, print versions like the book, printed at cost as well. So you have near limitless, and the adventures are written very well. They seem very setting neutral, very toolboxy, rather than how I think a lot of modern adventures are written, where they're very specific to a world or lore or setting or anything like that, or very railroady. I feel like a lot of modern D&D adventures are very railroaded, and they feel very toolbox, where you could drop them into almost any setting that is kind of a D&D based game that Basic Fantasy is, and it'll run fine in your setting. It will not feel out of place, and it will work. So I just love all of those things about it. So when I was coming off of 5th edition, it was the first OSR that I picked up. I picked up Basic Fantasy and the White Box medieval fantasy adventure game, which is, again, I've reviewed in the past, and they're both very similar. You could buy both together, and they're kind of cross-compatible. Although White Box uses the more swords. It's based off of Swords and Wizardry. It's just like an updated version of Swords and Wizardry, with some nice art in it too. That book is definitely like a little more produced than Basic Fantasy is, but I love the charm of Basic Fantasy. This gets me to how am I running the game? What other resources? Because you have everything you need in here. You have spells, monsters, the 4 basic classes that you would ever need to run the game, which I think less is always more. So fighter, cleric, thief, and magic user. You have monsters. You have magic item generation. You have random encounter tables. And you have some very light rules on strongholds, something 5th edition doesn't really even delve into very much. It might. I don't remember. It's been years since I ran a 5e game, a pure vanilla 5e game. Everything you need's in here. But the beauty of the OSR, in my opinion, is that everything builds on top of each other. You can take a product that, as long as it is using the old school D&D rules, it will work in your game without too much effort, without too much sort of translation of stat blocks or anything like that. It will generally be easy to run on the fly. Like if you are using Basic Fantasy, and let's say you want to supplement it with some Lion and Dragon, well, that's what I do. And it's very simple. It's very straightforward. They're both games. Lion and Dragon by RPG Pundit is a game that uses the BX rule set in a lot of ways. It's its own little variant on it. And the differences are so negligible system-wise between the two. It's more setting between these two things that I could take from this into this, and it's going to work just fine. Or what I'm also doing is I draw from the Rules Cyclopedia, BECMI, Basic Expert Companion Immortal. And this is and this are very similar to each other, and this are like almost completely compatible with each other, which is really great, really fantastic, because there's some stuff in here, and I want to do a whole separate video series on this, so I'm going to save some of that for this. But the beauty of the Rules Cyclopedia and why I love it so much since I've picked it up is how layered it is. You can make it as simple as this, or layer it with complexity, mass combat, very detailed stronghold rules, lots of different options for you right there like that. So I'm using those 3 books. That's kind of what I'm doing in my campaign setting. And what I'm drawing from each of them, I'm using pretty much Basic Fantasy as the core rule book for my campaign, where that's the book most people are referencing most of the time. What I'm drawing from Lion and Dragon is some of the lower magic. I like some of the magic items in there that are kind of lower magic. I like the demon summoning rules, which is perfect fodder for various quests, or giving options for players that maybe want to try and summon demons. It's different than just the straight up magic that occurs in the Basic Fantasy core rule book. So I like that. I also have a thief player, a player who's playing a thief, and he wanted to learn how to make poisons and engage in herbalism, because as a thief, he's like, I kind of want to go a more assassin route. Again, one of my opinions that less is more, and you don't need a million classes in order to do it. The base 4 can kind of, as a game master, you can allow them to branch off and become their own thing if you want. The base 4 will work fine in that regard. He wants to engage in alchemy, and so the beauty of the OSR and with Lion and Dragon is that Lion and Dragon has medieval authentic alchemy and sort of herbs and poisons that were used in the medieval era during the War of the Roses that I can just drop into my game. I have to change the skill system a little bit, because it takes me to the next point. In the Rules Cyclopedia, I am using the skill system from there, which is a roll under system. So if you are using, for instance, maybe you're trying to pickpocket, or let's say you're trying to intimidate someone, which is tied to your charisma score, and you try and engage in that, you would roll under the your charisma score if you're trained in intimidation or know how to use intimidation. If you roll under your score, and the game master can apply various modifiers or anything like that they wish to the roll. So a plus modifier is obviously going to make the roll more difficult. A negative modifier is going to make it a little easier. You're trying to roll under. So if you have a charisma score of 15, you're trying to roll a 15 or below in order to see if you are successful at this intimidation skill check. Or if you're trying to do alchemy, which is based on intelligence, like my thief character is, and he has an intelligence of 12, he's trying to roll under 12 in order to see if he is successful at crafting this poison that he wants to make as a thief, or these potions or herbalism that he's trying to engage in as well. So I'm using the skill system from the Rules Cyclopedia for that. And I really like that skill system. It's so different than what we typically see, especially with modern 5e and coming from a modern system where everything is roll over. And I kind of like the quirkiness of subsystems that are kind of unique to the purpose that they are built for. I rather kind of like that. I think that's part of the appeal of old school gaming to me, is kind of the quirky, almost jankiness of it. I made a video about this in the past. I'm also taking from the Rules Cyclopedia the mass combat rules. The mass combat rules are, there's going to be some advanced Dungeons and Dragons fans out there that want a little more of a hand in combat, but the mass combat rules in the rules cyclopedia I haven't had a chance to use them yet, but I'm going to use them if it arises. The player characters are not high enough level where I think a nobleman or a king would trust them to lead an army at the moment, but they could be. And so I'm using the mass combat rules from the rules cyclopedia, the War Machine, and it has rules for mass combat. It has rules for sieges and equipment that can be used in sieges, like ballistas and trebuchets. All these other sorts of things are in the rules cyclopedia for you to use. But yes, these are how I'm using these core 3 books for my game. I'm taking a little bit from everything, and I think it just highlights for me the beauty of such an open system as the old school Renaissance that it is, or retro clones or anything like that, that I could use off real D&D products, old school D&D products, or I could use clones of things, and these are going to work together. This is a fantastic price, and this is actually an alright price on DriveThruRPG. I'll have a link to all these books in the video description and where you can get them from. But that I can use this and this all together from a bunch of different creators, but yet it's still going to all function and work rather well together. And for me as a GM, it just sort of opens up the world of game mastering for me, even more than just running a straight 5e campaign is. Because trying to use an old school module in 5th edition is going to be very difficult. I mean, that's why Goodman Games has made like the Temple of Elemental Evil and a couple other adventures. I might be wrong. They've made a couple old school adventures where they've kind of they've done all the work for you and transitioned them to 5th edition. And, that's why you're paying for that product, because the work of doing that is kind of daunting and as far as like making it playable is concerned. But this is why I like the OSR. Everything is kind of cross-compatible. There's like cross-contamination, if you want to call it. There's some seeding back and forth between what you can use, and you can make a very unique campaign and game setting through this. So that's going to do it for this video. Future videos, I think we'll go through the core rulebook of Basic Fantasy and kind of talk about it, and I'll commentate on it and why I like it, and again, why I've chosen this. And hopefully, as we go through this topic, you will see why Basic Fantasy is a fantastic game to pick up. You're getting a bang for your buck when you're getting this game. So that's gonna do it for this video. What do you guys think? What is your game of choice? Sound off in the comments. Is it 1st edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons? Is it BECMI? Are you running I'd love to run a rules cyclopedia game, just like purely just that someday, but too many games to run, not enough time or people to play with in order to do that. But yeah, tell me what you think in the comments. What's your game of choice? What is your OSR of choice? Let me know. I'm interested in hearing about it, because again, everything's cross-compatible in the OSR, so whatever you're running, if it interests me, it's easy to add it into the cycle of books here that I can use to draw inspiration from. So yeah, let me know. Until the next video, guys, I'll talk to you later. Check out the links in the video description. Peace out.